guys, it's Brisingrize here, and I'd like to welcome you to a brand new thing on the channel, which is going to be all about my artwork. Every Wednesday I'm going to be creating a print designed by you guys. That means that you'll get the chance to vote on what subject I do. Isn't that cool? You guys get to join in on the artwork, because I'm sure a lot of you don't know, but one of the things I do apart from YouTube and gaming and mental health is that I am a businesswoman, and I run a little art business called Brooke Hannah Commissions over on Facebook, where I create commissions and also now will be selling prints based on the topics and other things that you guys decide should be the print of the week. And then at the end of each month, you guys are going to vote for your number one print and tell me which one should maybe be in a calendar. Isn't that cool? I hope so. I hope this goes well. But I wanted to start it off with something that I wanted to draw because I haven't been feeling the best. My mental health hasn't been brilliant and I've just been a bit down in the dumps. So I thought, why not kick this off with something that I'm passionate about? Now, the name of this piece is called Puppet on a String, and in just a few short moments you're going to see the process of how this came to life and what it represents. And the big thing that I was trying not to do is make it look like something out of NY Sync because of the song Bye Bye Bye, for all of you 90s kids out there, where they basically in the music video are literal puppets on a string. But this was actually inspired by my own experiences with certain friendships and The Witcher 3, Blood and Wine. So I'll get more into that and sort of explain how that sort of affected how this piece became what it is and what it originally was supposed to be. This will be as an audio recording, unfortunately, because for some weird reason I'm still working at Sony Vegas, and I'm just learning the ropes. But you'll be able to sort of hear me talk about it, and there will also be a speed paint uploaded without me talking, so you guys can just watch the process from beginning to end with music. So let's crack into this, guys. I hope you enjoy seeing the process and creation of Puppet on a String. Kicking off into this. So the first thing I always do when I start drawing is to find a reference and to decide on how I wanted this to look. As I kept drawing, it started to remind me a lot of fairy tales. I was originally looking at like hip-hop dance moves and ballet because, you know, like in ballet you're basically breaking your body, you're contortioning. But I couldn't find anything I liked until I looked up someone frolicking, and because the idea to me is that this person is completely naive and has no idea that they're a puppet on a string. And that's kind of where my idea with fairy tales comes in, and why The Witcher 3 became a huge inspiration. Because if you've played the Blood and Wine expansion or seen it, it's all about two sisters who live in this fairy tale land, essentially. And it's not until you like dig underneath the surface that you see this dark and grimy, and you realise that both of them really were puppets. And that's really where it comes from, because when you read old tales, and once again Witcher 3 adds into this with the Land of Fables, they're dark, man. The Grimm are just horrible. So that's really where it all started, the idea. Now you can see here that what I'm doing is, after I've used a reference to draw a very, very rough sketch, I'm making sure that I get the proportions right. And because I was thinking very Disney-esque and I really wanted to move with that idea, I figured this would be a good place to start. So what I do here is a whole lot of jiggery pokery, which is what I like to call it when I'm faffing around trying to work out how I want something to look. As you can see, I also leave a lot of notes on myself. This is just because if I take a break from the piece, which I sometimes do, because you know, sometimes you just get frustrated with something and you want to move away from it, you can. So I did actually take a couple of breaks in between and then just come back to my piece, because that's a really good thing to do as an artist. And I continued to play around with this leg for quite some time because it was starting to really tick me off. I'm a perfectionist, guys, so every time you see me do a print, you'll learn just how far that goes when I start getting frustrated. There have been times I have completely deleted a piece of artwork because I'm annoyed. Now, I've got Aurora here because when Sleeping Beauty, if you read the actual Grimm Tales, is super dark. And because I'm also blonde, and that was kind of the idea, you know, it's also me as a fairy tale creature, you know, as a princess, having no idea that I'm a puppet on a string. So what I do here is I'm just sketching like a super duper rough face and just general features of the body so that I can just get an idea of how this character's going to look. I kind of wanted like a sort of serene, innocent kind of look on their face, and for you not really to notice the fact that she's strung up like a puppet. I wanted that to be hidden until the end, and also I wanted people to be able to interpret it however they wanted, because let's face it, when you look at a piece of artwork, no one is going to have the same opinion of it, because it's going to mean something different to everyone. Art is subjective, and some people will like your artwork and some people won't. It's just one of those things. So I'll stop talking for now and I'll let you guys just watch the process as I bring this super rough sketch from a skeleton where hands and everything are a bit wibbly wobbly to what it becomes very soon. And you can also see that everyone was messaging me on Facebook while I was doing this. Don't forget guys, if you want to check out some of my other artwork and commissions I've actually done for clients, please head on over to Brooke Hannah Commissions over on Facebook. It'll give you a rough idea of what I can do. So enjoy the creepy music that I probably put with this. I don't know what I did, but yeah, just enjoy watching it become more Disney-esque and me playing with proportions. Cool. Okay, so now we've got a detailed sketch. This is what I usually do before I start going into line work, which is what I'm doing now. So what I'm basically doing is taking the bits that I've already done in this detailed sketch and I'm making them better, crisper, and just cleaner, because my style is quite clean. I try to keep my liner very clean, very unnoticeable, really, if that's even a word, I don't know, so that it doesn't take away from the colouring and the rest of the stuff that I do. I don't want the line art to be the main focus of the piece. I want the expressions of the characters and everything else that I do to be in the limelight. So what you can see here is that I'm just working on the hair because I didn't want it to look too much like Aurora's. I was using it as a reference because I really like the bounce of it. There's something really interesting about how Disney used to draw hair before they went into CGI animation, and even though it might sound a bit weird that I kind of diss it a bit, I do miss the frame by frame animation because you always had the different artist's style in it. Especially if you look at The Lion King, there are slight discrepancies in the way the characters are drawn because not all artists can draw exactly the same. They can draw to a basic design, but everyone's going to put their own thing into it, and that is kind of what inspired me to be an artist, because I wanted to be able to do something where I could bring my voice, because I'm originally an author, to a piece of artwork. And I always used to say I'll never draw humans, and now humans and doing emotions and stuff and humanoid characters is kind of my favourite thing. But I still draw Lion King, and maybe one day I'll show you guys, but that's just more for my own thing because Penda is very near and dear to me, and the story and everything came in a very difficult time of my life, but we won't go into that. So what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to work out how this hair is going to look. Because as I said, it's Disney inspired, but I don't want it to be entirely Disney-esque because I want it to be still my own style. And one of the hardest things when you're learning is you will end up mimicking other people's style. It's not your fault, it's just what happens. You're still learning the ropes and you're still trying to work out what you should be doing and how you should be designing it, and it can be a little nerve-wracking, so don't worry about it guys. The amount of times I drew like Bruce Timm when I was learning how to draw because I fell in love with the Batman animated series really taught me how I wanted to draw humans, and then I also added my love of Disney and a few other things in for good measure. I also use the curve tool a lot in sorry, off the track a bit, but this just allows me to get a much crisper look and a lot cleaner. You'll notice that some of my lines overlap at the moment. Don't worry, I always go back in and I fix that. So you guys can just sit back and watch as this slowly but surely comes to life. You'll notice I make a lot of edits from the detailed sketch as well because some of it doesn't really work. But yeah, just enjoy it for a little while, and then I'll get back to you guys when we're on to, I think, the colouring stage, because that's one of my favourite stages to do, because that is when you really start to bring something to life. Alright, so now we're on to my favourite part, colouring. Now what I've done is I have deepened the colours, basically made them a bit more dirty looking of the Aurora piece, because I really love the pinks and everything, and pink looks very fine with blonde, of course. So it was just a matter of making those colours look a little off-putting. When you look at a marionette, they're usually very colourful, but the idea is that this is a fairy tale character who isn't quite right. So by darkening the colours, you kind of get this kind of like evil look to things, and it works really well when you're trying to make something look a little bit more dead, as it were, which is kind of the idea here. You know, she's naive, she has no idea, she's just like, oh, I'm a puppet on a string, but I don't even know, I'm just frolicking through nature. You know, I don't see you with children in nature. Well, now you do. So what I'm doing now is I am colouring in the hair, and this is always something that I take a lot of pride in and a lot of care, because using the select pen inside can be a bit finicky sometimes, and I just want to make sure that it's covered nicely, and then I'll go back in and I'll do some more adjustments. So I'm just making sure I fill in all the bits that are the skin colour, and see what I mean by the blonde being kind of off, it really pales out the skin. And it's the same with the lips, because I usually don't draw lips, but because, you know, we're talking about a fairy tale character, of course we're going to have lips. We're going to nice and small lips, you know, because that's how Disney used to draw. They didn't draw a lot of full lips, so, you know, even though it looks really cool. Sorry, I'm waffling. And then what I'm also doing is, because to me she looks a little bit too dead, I wanted to kind of remind people, hey, this thing's alive. So I had a little bit of blushing, and this is also why I don't add much shading at the end. In fact, I don't think I had any shading, because I really liked it just as a flat piece, and it works really well, but you'll see towards the end. And then what I'm also doing here is colouring in the eyebrows, which when I drew it, I made sure that it was on a separate layer so that the liner of the hair can go over it, and once I start editing you'll see why this is a good idea. This is also a really great cheap way to do complicated things that you want to be a bit thicker, like the same line art colour. You just make a giant blob, and then you fill it in, and then you select the inverse, and then it fills it all in, and then everything else goes away. It's a very quick way of colouring, and it's probably one of the greatest shortcuts I've ever found, so I highly recommend using it if you use Paint Tool Sci, which is my go-to program. So you can see here I've got my opacity on my airbrush, which I use for shading, to a very low opacity, so it's almost see-through. What I'm doing is I'm just adding a little bit of life to her body. Not much, just enough so that you can see a little bit of warmth. And it works really well because it also helps her stand out against this grim kind of background, because there won't be a proper background, it'll just be a white piece of paper because this is a print. But you can see just how sort of off-putting it is, just putting a little bit of life into this character that's twisted into this very strange position, which is, you know, what you would do if you're a puppet on a string, because you can literally manipulate a marionette in such a way that you can get them into some really inhuman positions. So it works really well to up the creepy. So what I'm doing here is I'm just colouring in her lips and her teeth, which are also an off-white. Never ever, guys, one of the things I've learned, if you're going to shade, use pure white, because then the shading shows up way too much. If you want to soften it, it just doesn't work. Try and stick to the same colour family if you can. Go more of a grey, because against the skin colours and everything, it shows up more white and you can do a lot more shading. And now you can see here what I'm doing. I'm going back in with a very, very fine eraser, and I'm just removing the parts of the lines that are intersecting. This makes my art look cleaner, and it's something that I've just recently started doing, but I really do enjoy it because it makes my art look, in my personal opinion, a lot better, and just helps me take a lot more pride in it, because this kind of is my livelihood and I'm very passionate about drawing just as much as I am games. Because one of the things I would love to do eventually is to combine my love of gaming and drawing somehow, even though I don't think I could really get into the gaming industry because, ooh, you girl can't handle pressure. But yeah, what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to work out what colour Aurora's eyes are, and because I've darkened them, it works really well, especially when you add like more of a bluey grey into the irises, because it allows her to look more human, but at the same time there's something almost off-putting about it. And what I'm now doing is I'm just fixing up everything, making sure nothing overlaps. So that's kind of how I work. Now I get to do my favourite part, which is bringing to life the other parts of the piece that link it all together. I played a lot with the opacity and the thickness of the lines here because I didn't want the puppet part, the part that is controlling the puppet, to be obvious. I wanted it to be sort of an, how do I put this, off note, I think that's the right word, I'm not sure. I'm an author, I think very quickly. Sometimes I say words that don't make much sense, but to me they do. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding in the strings. And what I did is, because I cannot draw straight lines for the life of me, I use the line tool and I go over my original line art. This layers are important, layers, you know, onions have layers, ogres have layers, art should have layers. I'm doing this to make sure that everything is straight and looks good before I do a lot more jiggery pokery again, where I basically faff around and I fix all these lines so that they look like they are going behind a princess. And you'll see in a minute what I mean by that. So I zoom in here and I'm just making sure that everything makes sense, and then I select my character and I erase the lines where they intersect or they overlap, and that way all the lines are behind. I think I messed up a bit here, so what I did was I went back in with a very tiny eraser, and I did it by hand because I felt it looked cleaner and better. And looking at it now, yeah. Now also what I do is I go back in and I just clean up things. As I said, always are going to be erasing certain things just to make sure that all the line art works how I want it to, and that I have everything ready to go. So this is basically just me bringing the piece to a close. I'm not going to do much else to it. I was originally going to shade, but looking at it now, I'm glad I didn't. I kind of leave it how it is, and I also changed the colour of the strings to something a little bit more creepy. So you'll see soon what I mean by that. If I kept it the original line art colour, it did look cool, but it didn't fit the creepy aesthetic. And as I said, if you play through the Land of Fables, all these characters from the Brothers Grimm and the fairy tales that we grew up with as children, if you read nursery rhymes and stuff like that, are in it. But they've become twisted because they're basically trapped in this illusionary world. They don't know, but they're not real. And you get some pretty horrific things as a result that I won't go into in full detail. You guys should totally watch some Witcher lore videos. They are fantastic. And one of my favourites is one called When Magic Goes Bad, and it talks about the Fable Sphere and basically what it means. So that's basically the end of it. and I've got a image of the finished drawing to show you guys right here, right now. So I hope you enjoyed seeing the process and you enjoyed seeing how I take a drawing in a couple of hours from a very simple sketch to a fully detailed piece of artwork. Once again, thank you so much for sitting through 20 minutes of me blabbing on, and I hope that I continue to do more artwork related things in the future for you guys. As always, stay tuned for next Wednesday, where it will be the first ever print that you guys decide the theme on. Ka te te anō!